Hello and welcome to Fearless DIY Music. My name is Tristan Lass, and today I want to talk about what it takes for a guitar to make an excellent studio, or as I like to call them, tracking guitars. I have many guitars in my collection, but not all of them I designate as studio-ready instruments. They all intonate, they all stay in tune, they all have a good tonal variety, but there are certain guitars that I have held back. I don't really play them much except for when I'm getting ready to go into the studio to record. I don't know exactly why that is. It may be a psychological thing with me that they're like special and I don't want to, use them up just like practicing or jamming around or coming up with ideas. But when the rubber hits the road and I'm ready to record a track, I wanted to show you a couple of the guitars that I always seem to go to and went to recently during my tracking sessions for my new album. So, what are the criteria, in my mind, for a great tracking guitar? The first thing I have on my little list here in my hand is feel. I need to feel really, really comfortable with the instrument. I need to be ready to sit with it for, hours on end, playing the same thing over and over again until I get the right take. So having a guitar that's very comfortable in the hand, comfortable, in a seated position, comfortable, when you're really focused with headphones on and you can't really move around much, that is something that is very, very important. If a guitar just does not feel good, or you're not comfortable sitting with it for extended periods, you can kind of rule it out as being a great tracking guitar. All right, the next thing is tone. This goes without saying. You don't want to go through all the trouble of recording something and having it not be up to snuff when it comes time to mix, and you're like, boy, that just did not really sound as good as I wanted it to, or it didn't have quite the right cut for the track. So the guitars that I have kind of designated for studio use, I'm very familiar with how they record and what kind of tones I can expect from them. I want something reliable. I want something that will, be satisfying in a mix, and it takes time to go through and find that. Lots of trial and error, and through all the years, I found that, the Sputterscotch Telly and my trusty LGO over here have never failed me. So that is one of the criteria. Tone. Tuning stability. Tuning stability is huge. You have to have an instrument in your lap, or if you record standing, whatever, you have the instrument in your hands, you're going to be doing take after take, and I do, after a couple of takes, always check to make sure that I'm still in tune, but you want a guitar that you don't have to worry about coming out halfway through the take. I've had that happen with certain instruments where you get down and you've recorded like 3 minutes of the track, and then the last 30 seconds, it started sliding a little bit out of tune. Be it the strings, the tuners, the bridge, whatever it may be, you want to come up and find instruments in your collection, or if you only have a couple instruments, make sure that those instruments have the best tuning stability possible so that you can play them for hours on end and not have to continually be fighting with it to try to keep it in tune, because the worst thing in the world is getting done with something and realizing that something in the mix is a little bit out. All right, and along with tuning, you have the intonation issue. You want to make sure that when you're playing in the higher registers of the instrument that the notes are not off. Intonation is a tricky thing. Sometimes you have to do a slight compensated tuning where you go slightly sharp or flat on a particular string to make sure that everything's nice and even all the way up and down. But what you want is you want to get as close as possible and have a guitar that holds great intonation as well. Because the last thing you want to do is slide up and do a bar chord on the 12th fret and have it just a little bit off. That just is not acceptable in my mind if I'm going to be using a guitar for tracking. And then the final thing, which kind of goes along with, tuning stability and intonation, would be an evenness of volume across the strings. There are a lot of guitars that are amazingly built, but yet somehow you'll notice that the D string for some reason rings out a little bit louder than all the other strings, or you've got a string that's slightly dampened in comparison with all the others. Once again, this takes time and vetting and experience, and also just lots of hours with the guitar in your hands to figure out what instruments you have at your disposal that have the most even sound across all 6 strings. Because you don't want to have things that are just popping through noticeably when you're recording, that you kind of go, oh, wow, that's really just like in your face, whereas the rest of it is nice and even. All right, well, to kind of demonstrate things a little bit, let me grab a pick here. I want to start off by showing a couple of the guitars that I use as my default tracking guitars. This is a 1982 Squier Telecaster, made in Japan, nothing special. It is an amazing tracking guitar. I never ever play this except when I'm recording. Then all of a sudden I find that I'm reaching for it constantly because it has everything that I just listed off. Let's go ahead and turn it up here. And what this guitar does, it's nice and bright, and I only use it on the bridge pickup when I'm recording. And it may seem too bright in the room, but the moment that it's recorded and put into a mix, this guitar just shines. It sounds great, it has great articulation, great evenness, stays in tune incredibly well. And this is just a go-to guitar for me. If I'm gonna, and I mainly use it for rhythm parts, you know, if I want to have a little just a little nice shiny, you know, kind of shimmery thing in the background. I use it a lot to just arpeggiate chords and use as a second rhythm instrument in the mix, and it always just cuts right through and gives you that just what you want on a track, you know, if you're looking for that kind of thing. And then also, I just kicked on a little bit of dirt. It is an amazing guitar for just like being the primary rhythm guitar on a dirtier track, you know, if you want to, you know, if you're rocking out. And I just absolutely love how it sounds distorted. It sounds phenomenal. Like I said, cuts through the mix and checks all of those boxes. I love this guitar. I never play it except for in the studio. And I thought it would be fun just to finally put it on camera because you're probably not going to see it again unless I'm doing something live in the studio. All right, moving along. When you get into the realm of acoustic guitars, things are very, very tricky. If you're using, you know, a dreadnought guitar, I never record with dreadnoughts. Dreadnoughts to me are difficult to capture the beauty of, you know, in the studio. Far more difficult than using a small body guitar like this. This is an early 60s Gibson LGO. It's my older one. I've had this guitar for quite some time, 25 years, and it is beaten up and it's been a shambles for a long time, but I finally, you know, I've got a video on this guitar. Maybe I'll link that below. In fact, I will link it below, and how I got it all up and running and perfectly intonated and things like that, so I can actually play it up to the 12th fret. But the great thing about these small body acoustic guitars, and particularly this one, it's very, very comfortable. The neck is nice and thin. I find that is not a deterrent for finger picking. I use it all the time, and people always say, oh, well, you should use a guitar with a wider string spacing for finger picking, but I could sit with this guitar for hours and play it, and my hand does not fatigue. You know, in the tonal qualities of it as well, you know, beyond the comfort of the small body and the nice comfortable neck, the tonal qualities of this guitar on its own, you may, you know, be listening to it and going, oh, well, that's nothing exceptional. But when you put 2 microphones up on this guitar, nothing sounds better recorded than this acoustic guitar in my collection. And I've got some really nice acoustic guitars. And I tried to track with my most expensive custom-made guitar for the album, and I found that I ended up using this almost exclusively because it just sounded better. And, you know, it sounds great strummed as well. I did a little finger picking and then just do, you know. And what I love about it is it doesn't have a huge amount of sustain. So that's great because it doesn't develop overtones. And you can really hammer on it and it doesn't kill the mics, and it's just so stable and steady, and the evenness across the strings, all the things that I was describing earlier, this guitar delivers fully. And that's why it is my primary tracking acoustic guitar. All right, well, I hope that's of help to somebody who's, you know, getting ready to, you know, hunker down and start doing some recording, thinking about the things to check for on an instrument so that you will get your best result. And like I said at the top, you know, I think perhaps the greatest thing to look for, the greatest two things, tuning stability and comfort. Make sure the guitar feels really good. Make sure that you're willing and happy to play it for an extended period of time in total comfort. All right, well, if you made it this far in the video, I'd really appreciate a like and a subscribe, share it around, and also leave something in the comments. Do you have a guitar that you track with that it's kind of exclusive to that? Do you have particular instruments that you would never try to record? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear it. All right, you take care, hit subscribe, and we'll see you next time.